Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again with another new build, and this time around it is inspired by the Crucible mod for Exsanguinate and Reap that converts all of its damage to fire. So it converts 100% of the original phys to fire, and interestingly enough, also the secondary damage over time. Prior to now, I don't think there's been any damage over time conversion that I'm aware of in the game, except for Black Flame, which is a different type of situation, but kind of similar as well. Either way, so it converts all of your damage to fire, and you can essentially build it as a pretty typical Reap or Exsanguinate after that point, but focusing on fire damage instead. You can choose to focus purely on the DoT, you can choose to focus more on the hit and do hit crit based, or you can choose to focus more on just an ignite initial hit. In my build and situation, I've chosen to try my best to scale the initial hit ignite and also the secondary damage over time, which is a technical burn at this stage as well. So it scales the normal way an ignite build would scale. You are then using fire damage over time, and fire damage over time multiplier instead of physical damage. Beyond that point, yeah, it's pretty simple. So we've done plenty of ignite builds, we've done a few Exsanguinates and Reaps and stuff, and this one is kind of combining the combo. So this is an Elementalist, actually in the end quite similar to my starter Exsanguinate when it first came out. So it was just an Elementalist that stacked a lot of golems. You ran Exsanguinate, you focus on the damage over time, and beyond that, you did whatever you wanted. And in this case, I am choosing to build quite thick on my character as my choice of whatever I want. So you can get a bunch of damage over time, some golem effect, and then you've kind of got flexibility to do other things. So I've chosen to go pretty heavily into block, pretty heavily into some damage reduction and some life regen. So I don't have a large amount of life in this build in the end, maybe 4.5k once it's all said and done, but it should have blocked attack cap and also spell block cap. On top of that, 90% damage reduction, some of which is still armor, but a lot of it is actual golem effect and all that. And then also choosing to do about 1500 to 2k life regen a second. It really depends on how much or how hard you want to go on it. I'm currently sitting at about 1600 and can have room for a little bit more. So overall, it's a really nice playstyle. Like, I loved that Exsanguinate character that I played quite a while back. When it first came out, that was a starter that took me to level 95, which doesn't commonly happen on starters. And it's just a smooth playstyle where you run around, you sling some ropes, and they chain real nice, and the damage over time is satisfying, and the damage is very effective. It's not like, dice rolly that you don't have to worry about crit or flasks or anything like that. It's basically reliable. What you see is what you get. When you right click, you're going to have that reliable source of damage happening. In this case, I'm also using Reap as a more heavy hitter as the actual 6th link. So my Exsanguinate is a 4 link with a built-in 5th link from Essence of Delirium. That's my main clear. Reap is the single target. Reap can be a bit more of a clear, but it's never going to compare to Exsanguinate plus Chain. So if you really want, you can focus strictly on Reap, but you will be missing out on the juiciness that is Exsanguinate Chain. You can see here in the background the map I chose to do, and then full juice at Crucible was probably one of the craziest map rolls for damage I've seen, and I just wanted to give it a shot. And we did the whole thing deathless comfortably. Granted, a few little close calls. But it is a nice playstyle, it is a thick character. It can be something that sits back and does damage from range, or it can kind of face tank and still absorb a lot of hits and get a lot of recovery at the same time. So I was just saying about the Reap. The Reap is basically the main single target in the build because it can stack up to 6 blood charges, which ends up pretty much doubling the damage of the Reap itself. And then with Val Reap being a new toy to play around with, you can get even more blood charges. I very rarely actually have to press it at the moment. So it's just run in, Reap a few times, try and get your blood charges up, try and get elemental overload up, hit them with a big ignite, hit them with a big damage over time, throw in an Exsang grenade if you want, and it so far is looking pretty endgame viable. I don't know how well it's going to go against most Uber bosses, because it's not huge amounts of damage. It's maybe like 5 to 10 million in the end. Going to be tough to POB this one, to be honest, but 5 to 10 million reliable is pretty decent for most content, even the Ubers. The biggest problem would probably be the golems. So the golems are going to be kind of squish, and they might be dying to some Uber content. They have in the past, but you can still get by. Plenty of Ubers don't kill them. And then just a quick example of the current thickness here. Even with a Maven DJ Orb and then Chimera attacking, you can see that every single time we block, it's that little Tempest Shield proccing, so we're blocking quite a lot, but then he also basically does no damage to us. So it's a very nice character for kind of a more getting hit playstyle while still dealing good damage, compared to the Ice Shot build, which is just dealing all the damage, but you don't really want to get hit, for example. So I want to just go ahead and show you how I build the character thus far. So here's the current character, level 92, Reap, so hot right now. And yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory. It is based around the Reap mod over here, 100% Exsang and Reap phys converted to fire, fire damage as the secondary. So as you can see, on the Reap itself, has a big phys hit, then a base damage over time as a secondary effect for a second, 20% more life per blood charge, 15% more damage per blood charge as well. So it does start to cost a substantial amount of life, and that's why building life regen into the build feels pretty good. Currently 160 life. Once it's fully like ramped up, you're taking like 300 life hits almost every single cast, and with my current life regen, it doesn't do anything. So that's kind of how it feels to do life regen with a Reap. You want to just counter it, and in this case I've gone pretty hard though. Like I said, about 1500 life regen, so I can actually face tank a lot of things as well. Currently 90% phys damage reduction. We've got 62 actual blocks, 73 spell block, and then with roomies it's capped, but nothing good against proper elemental damage, so just regular resists and no spell suppress. So some hits that are going to come through, like, you know, Maven Shaper sort of attacks might hit pretty hard. We'll deal with that if we need to when it happens. Either way, we are building around that modifier, so it's kind of just a go for plus phys levels and then do fire damage and damage over time, but it's a pretty conventional golem stacking build from me. I've done plenty of these, and I do like the generic golem stack because you get a lot of golems. So 5 by default, and then if you're running a primordial chain as well, you get up to 8, and then that gives you a bunch of buff effect to your golems, and then also increased buff effect per additional golem. And then if you stack these guys, primordial bonds, you get increased damage per golem as well. So that's why we have so many golems. Each one does different things, so damage reduction, crit, attack and cast speed. Sorry, that's life regen, that's damage reduction, and then actual damage. Having more of them, whichever ones you pick, doesn't really matter because the buffs don't stack, so I don't get 2 stone golem buffs or anything. It's just you pick whichever one you want to, I don't know, have more of, I guess. But yeah, the idea is to then stack primordial bonds, so very, very basic large clusters. Just going for primordial bond, you can basically get almost nothing else that you really want on these. But then you're going for the primordial bond and then getting megalomaniacs, and megalomaniacs can have lots of primordial bond action comboed with plenty of other useful shit. In my current situation, I've just gone for block, like an extra special block node on almost every single megalo, because that's what I've chosen to focus on. Still really not sure if it's correct. Just going like max res and maybe some spell suppress, or maybe some conversion, or I don't know, more life even might still be better with the amount of thickness we have, because block is so unreliable in the end. Like, yep, 75 block, but then 1 in 4 hits are still going to potentially kill you. So it feels good by all means. First time I've actually built into block in a very long time, and it feels pretty good having pretty much capped block for both of these, but it's going to find you out in some pieces of content sometimes. Hopefully it's enough to like help me take on really good stuff like simulacrum, that sort of thing, but we'll see. So I've chosen to do primordial bond plus some block on pretty much every single megalo, a little bit of like 3 and 3 on each one. Some of them have a bit of something extra, so fire leech, this one's got a life node. This one does have hull, but like it's not very good, so I'm not really speccing it because the damage over time doesn't really affect it that way. And then this one over here has block once again and nothing else. I could have gone more expensive, like about 1 or 2 divines, to typically get like a real good third mod. So for example, malevolence, aura reduction, determination, reservation reduction, that sort of stuff. It's usually in the 1 to 2 div range. Each of these are more like 50 to 80 C, but yeah, I went cheap and accessible just to prove more about the build itself or the skills themselves. So that's what it all looks like, and the ascendancies that we've gone for are these. We then have the big ignite stuff, so we don't have to worry about getting ignite chance, and also good damage with the ignite, and then the exposure thing. We are missing out on harder destruction, and if we really want it, we could get it, but it'd be a little bit expensive, and I didn't want to, once again, show that it's a bit of an out of reach build. So you'd do this, and then you'd probably buy this as the Forbidden Flesh and Flame, because that's the cheapest one. So yeah, we're otherwise just scaling plus levels and stuff. I went with a +1 phys wand and just rolled essences on it, essences of minion damage, and all I was looking for was additional fire. Also managed to land fire damage over time multi, so it was a really nice wand roll. And the wand itself, I was just scouring, putting trees on and off until something decent happened. I didn't quite get what I wanted, so I wanted fire damage over time multi as one of the mods as well. But we got +2 socketed spell gems, so I tried to utilize that by getting a few extra gem levels on some things. We got... That's nothing. I wanted 1 to min endurance and frenzy, so a little bit of extra boost, and then I've also got some curse effect here for good measure, but we take some extra curse as well. So it's just an okay wand. I wanted fire damage over time multi plus min frenzy and endurance, and we could go for that min max by smashing some trees together, but I kind of like my wand roll. I didn't really want to compromise on that. Whereas the shield, I was smashing plenty of shields together just to get the reap mod on there, combined with something else, and in the end we got unfortunately reduced life regenerate, but I didn't want to have to risk going again because I wanted a block mod. Got 12 block -5 block, still a pretty decent block mod. Something useful in the form of reduced LE reflect, so I can run LE reflect maps, but mostly that. There are plenty of other good things, malevolence, plenty of good block nodes. There's much better block nodes than what I've got, which could make camping block a lot easier, but that's what I've settled for. Grabbed a +1 phys fracture and then just rolled it with... Shit, what did I even roll it with? I think it was life, harvest, and just hit minion life and a couple of block rolls. So I just went with that and leaned a bit heavier into the block meme. The only other real interesting item is the chest. I just tried to look for 2 duration, 2 AoE corruptions so that my reap can go +4 levels. And a Kingsguard, just very basic, has some life, has some armor. This thing was 1 divine. There's plenty of chests like that. You can do 2 AoE, 2 duration. You can do 2 AoE +1 level. You can do 2 duration +1 level. You can kind of just... I was tossing up between even doing a chest like this at all, because you can do just a really nice regular chest that has aura effect on it and malevolence aura effect, and then that means your malevolence will be way bigger, and that'll also affect your exsanguinate. But in the end, yeah, just grabbed one of these for 1 divine, put it together using tainted fusings and stuff, and currently at a level 27 reap. If I manage to get this one to a level 21, then we'll have a level 28 reap, and that's where we'll be. We have cruelty attached to it, awaken burning, awaken added fire, swift affliction, and efficacy. So burning damage works on both portions of the skill, both the ignite and the secondary damage over time. So you can see we've got 270,000 fire damage as the secondary there, and burn damage does scale that as well as the ignite. So it's pretty powerful support, whereas an added fizz, added fire only does fizz as fire just for the ignite portion. But it does +1, which does help the secondary as well. So finding the right supports for this type of build is a bit tough. Cruelty's good, but in endgame it might fall off a bit. We'll see. Swift Affliction is good as long as you can keep reapplying your ability. And then Efficacy, just something we got to do for a bit more duration, and also there's not much else we can do at that point. And then Exsanguinate, like I said, has that 30% more damage over time from Delirium Essence, and then we've got Burning Damage, Chain, and Combustion at the moment. I then grabbed some Fractures and just used Essences of Delirium. This one's a really good ring for other builds with the early damage attacks, but otherwise we're just looking for like a resist, hit that. Life regenerate, and then just made basic sort of items there. And once again, running in Immortal Flesh for a lot of extra regen. Really don't have to do it, but it is nice to get a bunch of extra regen, as well as a bit of extra thickness. And I might catalyze this one in the end too for even more. Also picked up a Primordial Chain with additional curse and block on it. That was like 50C or some shit. No one cares about these. And it's not really even a right choice because it does give golems a lot less life. It's possibly the right choice, but I haven't really looked into min-maxing or some shit. I like having Primordial Chain for all the golem effect, even though the golems have way less life. They will be dying to some things, sometimes Crucible, sometimes some other shit, but they are immune to elemental damage, so for the most part they are somewhat durable. Yeah, and the two curses we are currently doing are Flammability and Ellie Weakness, though you could also Anoint to get an additional curse. And I also tossed up between using Alchemist Mark. Currently not using it, not sure if it'll actually be that good or worth like fitting into the build, because it will be tough to apply it during situations. Other links we got are Flame Dash, Ellie Weakness, Flammability. This is a Val Reap, so just on a single side link. If you press Val Reap without even being attached to the main one, your blood charges go up to a maximum of like 9 or some shit, or 10, and then this one gets affected by that. Ideally, I turn this into a Val Reap and a level 21 one. It's currently Anomalist, just a bit of extra crit. That's not really necessary with the Ice Golem, but that's what I'm doing. If I can get a Val Reap in this main setup, then I can chuck in a Molten Shell here instead. We've got an Ice Golem, Flame Golem, faster attacks, shield charge, Tempest Shield, which gives us a lot of extra spell block, Chaos Golem, Determination, Lightning Golem, Malevolence, and Stone Golem. And then Flasks and the tree. We do have a Thread of Hope over here just to kind of grab a few things a bit easier. This is actually a really cool node, bunch of spell block, and then we get the mana reserve, so you don't have to take like, in this build, you don't have to take a kind of crappy mana mastery for reserve. You can get some really good stuff in the form of spell block, and then mana reserve as well. And then we pick up the golem node there, bit of fire damage, elemental overload, reserve and stuff, anima stone just for +1 golems. And yeah, so far that's it. It's not super hard to put together, but it is a bit specific on things. Leveled with Reap and Exsanguinate all the way through. Pretty clean playstyle typically, and can highly recommend it. So that's my so far attempt at the Fire.multi version. We'll see how it pans out in Ubers and all that. But it's been great so far, and it is a really nice addition to the game with a Crucible mod. Thank you very much for watching. See you guys next time.